Hey everyone, Sky here to discuss The King of Staten Island, starring Pete Davidson, Marissa Tomei, Bill Burr, Bill Powley, Maud Apatow, and Steve Buscemi, and directed by Judd Apatow. Now, before I get into this movie, I must say I was a little nervous about this one because of the last three movies, Funny People, This Is 40, and Trainwreck, were a diabolical bunch of crap. So I was nervous about this one, and I hope it's just as successful as 40-Year-Old Virgin and Knocked Up for me, but let's get into this movie, and then I'll see what I think. Let's get started. We open with Scott, played by Pete Davidson, driving and causing a hit and run, and I thought, what the fuck is that about? Then we move on to watching a Purge movie with his friends, and he's a tattoo artist, and as the dialogue goes on, I don't find this movie very funny. And how could you make jokes about your dead father, which didn't make much sense to me. His best friend Kelsey, played by Bill Powley, are doing things friends with benefits, or no strings attached, depending on what you want to call it, which is making me uncomfortable. Scott's mother, Margie, played by Marissa Tomei, and gets ready with Scott's little sister Claire, played by Maud Apatow's graduation, and I'm thinking, these are despicable and miserable characters, and I don't like any of them whatsoever. At one point, she's a nurse and is in the middle of a patient and gets distracted by a stupid phone call. My God, and after she hangs up, the patient vomits. And I'm thinking, if I were her boss, she would be fired like a snap of a fucking finger. Then at the graduation party, he's offered a job at a restaurant by a family friend, Joe, and they're all picking on Scott, and these scenes are making me groan. Scott and Claire have a conversation about suicide before Claire leaves for college, and this is more depressing than funny. I'm gonna be honest, this is kind of blunt. While at the beach, Scott and his friends encounter with a kid named Harold, and he wants a tattoo of the Punisher. Go figure. And Scott almost makes him until the 90-year-old freaks out and runs to his father, Ray Bishop, played by Bill Burr, and leads him to date Margie because he yells at her and later on apologizes. They date after that, which is against the law to give a minor a tattoo or anything, so I understand how he reacted, but dating his mother, and like Scott's father, who died a long time ago, is a firefighter, and they chat about Scott's tattoos as he got one with Kermit the Frog smoking a joint, and Ray says he's from Sesame Street, and I yelled, "He's from the Muppets! Get your shit together!" So this script really needs to get its shit together, and 30 minutes of this thing needed to be edited. I'm sorry, it's a little too long. Scott meets Ray for the first time since he yelled at him, as he finds out by Margie telling him, and they visit him at the restaurant, and that scene was totally awkward, honestly. And the movie is making me very uncomfortable with the bad jokes, and Ray invites Scott going to the minor league of Staten Island Yankees and meets his firefighter mates, including the captain, Papa, played by Steve Buscemi, who I always enjoy seeing in the movies. And again, it's fucking awkward. And this is half of the movie I'm not enjoying, nor am I laughing at all. Margie and Scott asks Scott to move out in 9 months, and Ray asks Scott to take his kids, Harold and Kelly, to school, and Ray's ex-wife doesn't approve, nor does Scott, to be fair, but he does it anyways, and they talk superheroes and singing. He just doesn't make me comfortable, and my problem is that Pete Davidson can't pull off comedy. But despite I don't watch Saturday Night Live, but he's much better at drama than comedy, as this is a dramedy at best, but I'm not finding it funny. But to be totally honest, I just don't find this movie very funny. At one point, he complains while Margie, and Ray visit Claire at school and at a restaurant after Claire brought up a marriage, and he goes to a college party with Claire and her friend, and I thought the guy was being an asshole, and those scenes could have been cut out of the movie because this movie is 30 minutes too long. Scott overhears Ray and Margie saying he's lost it and is going nowhere, and his friends rob a pharmacy and they get caught as he's distracted by Galaga and Instagram, and as soon as the gun fires, their friends are too stupid to vibrate the phones, as one of the songs is the theme from The Office. And Scott fucking bails, and why does he do it? Like, why did he do it in the first place when he said no to begin with? Just, Jesus. Scott and Ray's ex-wife get drunk and talk shit about Ray, and this is too obvious. They don't like the idea of the two of them during, and this is way too cliche for the movie to go there. Scott and Ray fight each other until Margie kicks both Scott and Ray out of the house, and I still hate these fucking characters. Even Margie comes off like a bitch. Just end it there. Well, we're about to get to the better half of the movie, so let's get more into this. Scott asks people if found all around if he could crash at one of their places until he gives up and gives the firehouse and sleeps there with Ray refusing him to stay there, and Papa tells him he could stay, and this is where I'm starting to kind of enjoy myself at an hour and 34 minutes into the movie because it's reminding me of what I went through when I had a job like that, except I was a janitor once in my life. Papa makes him stay and takes him as a janitor, and he works and does a good job at those chores, and Ray joins in and on the jokes firefighters do to each other. And I can relate to these scenes because I went through those. While he's learning at the firehouse, Scott visits Margie while she's drunk and locks him out. What kind of mother does that to her kid? A pretty fucking terrible one, I must admit. Scott joins the firefighters on one ride and sees them in action, and he feels inspired, and they celebrate, and Papa tells Scott he worked with his father for 6 months. And I like these scenes, and Steve Buscemi is good but not great in this movie, and I do like these scenes for Steve Buscemi, and the relationships in these scenes work good but again not great. For example, Ray asks Scott to tattoo his back, and it works fine just the second half of the movie. A wounded man who was bleeding in the stomach, as Scott takes him to the hospital, and Ray arrives, and they take him to the ER where Margie is, and she forgives them both, and Scott comes back home. In the final scene, Ray drops off Scott to take Kelsey, whom throughout the movie had a rocky relationship with him. They go on the boat to New York City, and he tests her for a quiz, and he drops her off at the building, and he waits for 3.5 hours. And I like the second half more than the first half, I'm not going to lie. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 3.9 out of 10. I didn't laugh at all. The characters are despicable and miserable, and they're not likable, except for Steve Buscemi, who I always enjoyed. The second half is so much better than the first half because it was about the relationships, and I can relate to them by then. But unfortunately, the movie is not good enough for me to recommend it to the world. I mean, honestly, I didn't like the first hour and a half of the movie, but then I liked the last 45 minutes of it. I'm sorry, this is the worst. Well, not the worst. Not as bad as, like, say, Funny People, This Is 40, or Trainwreck. Those are just the dumpsters. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and until next time, tone it down, Judd.